Today's Daf, Erev Yom Kippur, is Daf Yud Zayin. Today's the Yahrzeit of my father, so we'll learn the Schuss of my father, Rav David Nachman ben Rav Moshe. And we're up to two lines at the top, and we're going through each case in the Mishnah where it says that all of these people, not only is it usher these kohanim to work in the base of Mikdash, but the Chiddush of the Mishnah is that they actually passel the carbon. And we're going through each one, and how do we know? Went through a Zar, a Yisrael who works in the base of Mikdash, an Oinen, and now we're up to Tvul Yom. A Tvul Yom is someone who was Tameh, went to the mikveh, and now he has to wait for let's say for Truma, he has to wait until the sun sets. That's called a Tvul Yom. Certain cases, certain exceptions like a Zov or a Mitzvah, let's say someone has leprosy or a Zov, then not only he had emissions, not only does he have to wait for the sun to set, but he has to also bring kabbanas the following day. So that period is called Mechusah Kippurim. He's not just Tvul Yom in Mechusah Kippurim, which means even after he went to the mikveh, even after the sun set, he's still Mechusah Kippurim. And therefore, he's not allowed to eat any Kaddish. And we are going to discuss here, very interestingly, the status of a Mechusah Kippurim. Because with Pashtus, in the hierarchy, he's much lower. He already went through the mikveh. He already went through the sunset. So he already is equal to a Truma he can eat already. So that means his Truma has been reduced substantially, and all he has to do is wait for a carbon. I mean, that's Pashtus Pshat. The Gemara is going to change all that around, as we will see. So let's go through a Tvul Yom. How do you know a Tvul Yom if whatever avoid in the Beis Midrash is possible? Tvul Yom in Nolan, how do you know he actually rules the avoid in the Beis Midrash? Tanya Belunja, Rabbi Shimon Yomer, Rabbi Yitzayin, Omer Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Rabbi Shimon says, Remez l'Tvul Yom, a hint, Tvul Yom, Sheim Avad, that if he worked in the Beis Hamikdash Chilul, he actually ruins the carbon. Minayin, how do you know? Tamalaymer, we know how we know that from the beginning of Kedoshim. It says Kedoshim. It says in Kedoshim. Kedoshim talks about a kohen, which members of the family he's allowed to be metami, and otherwise he's not allowed to be metame. And then it says that otherwise he should be careful. He should not become tummy, because if he becomes tummy, he will chalu means he's going to mechal. He's going to ruin whatever he touches in the Beis Hamikdash. And then it says because he's involved in the Beis Hamikdash navoda. Now, we don't need this pasuk to tell you that a Talmudic person ruins whatever kabbanas he has. Why not? Could be enough. We learned it right away from the pasuk, the Yenazur. We learned it yesterday that the Yenazur you should separate the kachim b'nei Yisrael and b'lo yechalu. It says over there. So we already know that a tameh, if he's involved, and it talks about the parsha of tumah. We know that if he's involved, he ruins it. Why say it again? So we go back to the general rule: Yimeina inyan is through inyan l'tful yom. We don't need it for tumah, so we'll carry it over to tful yom. The Gemara asked the obvious question. We don't know what to carry it over to. There are a number of other averis for a kohen to behave, to comport himself in the Beis Hamikdash under the influence of alcohol, for example. So how do you know? Maybe that's what the pasuk is coming. Maybe telling you that if he was under alcohol, he ruins the carbon. Maybe that's what it's for. Or, for example, that we'll see that ruining alcohol takish to yain does passel. But it says over there in that very parsha, it says in that parsha, it says that you shouldn't rip out your hair and you shouldn't rip out your beard. So you shouldn't destroy your beard. So maybe that's that kohen is allowed to do that. So maybe he's coming to tell you if a kohen did that, his avoid is possible. How do you know so much Tvul Yom? So Gemara says, and how do you know? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you how you know. Tvul Yom, because where do we learn out that a Tvul Yom, if a Tvul Yom does avoid his chayiv misa? How do you know if a Tvul Yom works in the Beis Hamikdash? Knows he already went to the mikveh, but he didn't wait for the sunset. How do you know he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim if he does it? We know it's a gzera shava from truma. It says chilul over here, and it says chilul by truma. Now, so that means whatever, and this passage right here, whatever we're going to learn out from Imeina Inyan, it has to be something, because we know the Gzera Shav is there, and we know that we were given Gzera Shav from Moshe and Sinai. So it has to be some kind of avodah that if this would have been with Truma, you'd be Chayiv Misa. Now, nowhere does it say by Truma that if somebody's mashchus is zaken, if he destroys his beard, he's not allowed to eat Truma. Or if he makes a bald spot for a mace, he's not allowed to eat Truma. It's only Tvul Yom. It's only tumah. Only a tumah is not allowed to. So therefore, since we used to have a shava from this pasuk to truma to teach you about chiv misa, it has to be someone who is Taka Shaykh to Chai Misa. So that's how we know it's Tvul Yom. Says the Gemara. The Imam of Misa, and Allah, how do you know that Tvul Yom, if he works based on Chai Misa, they're going to Mechil Truma? The apostle Betruma, Machil Avodah. So only someone that's not allowed to eat Truma, if he works Avodah based on Migdash, he ruins it. Or but the apostle Betruma, people who are not apostle eating Truma, for example, somebody who destroys his beard, then Machil Avodah, then it's not part of the Shav, and therefore this apostle, Imain is not talking about that person. Omar Rabba says Rabba. So now we have a number of psukim. Lo malida kasher achmana tamei. We have a pasuk when it comes to tamei. Now we're not asking on tamei because we need that. We learn everything from tamei. But once we have tamei, why do you need a pasuk for tvul yoyim, which is the pasuk we just said right now? Kedoshim yiv lechalu. And why can't you just learn to compare tvul yoyim to a tamei? And then you also will see later the pasuk from Mechusei Kippurim. Why do you need a pasuk from Mechusei Kippurim as well? Once you know that Tameh is, if he works the base of Migdash, he ruins everything. So that's Tvul Yom, which is Tameh, Mechusei Kippurim is still Tameh, it's lingering on. Then you know it. So you know, Tzricha, we need all three. The Ikos Rachmana Tameh, if you only knew Tameh, we definitely need Tameh. It's not a question, because that's the basis for everything. She came a Tameh, we would say, you know why that if he works the base of Migdash, he ruins the carbon? Because it's so strict. He can contaminate other people. So therefore, we're Machmeh. But a Tvul Yom or Mechusei Kippurim does not. So maybe they don't ruin the avodah. She came at Tame. No, but Tvul Yom. Let it just say Tvul Yom. Then Mechusei Kippurim le'asim. They would not learn Mechusei Kippurim from Tvul Yom. Why? I would say she came pasul betruma. A Mechusei Kippurim, somebody who already went to the mikveh and already had sunset, is allowed to eat truma, even though he still has to bring a carbon to eat touch him, but truma is allowed to. Masha Enkein or Tvul Yom is not allowed to eat truma until sunset. So which is stricter? But Tvul Yom is stricter than Mechusei Kippurim. Remember, Mechusei Kippurim doesn't really kick in until after Harav Shemesh. So therefore, who's stricter? Tvul Yom. So I would say, Tvul Yom. What do you call it? Tvul Yom who cannot eat truma. If he works a base of Migdash, he ruins the carbon. But when it comes to Mechusei Kippurim, which he's allowed to eat truma, so it's a much lower level of Easter. Maybe if he works a base of Migdash, does not ruin the carbon. So let it just say Mechusei Kippurim. If he tell me a Mechusei Kippurim, which is so weak, and yet he ruins the carbon he works at, surely a kohen who's a Tvul Yom surely should ruin the carbon. Tvul Yom last minute, he wouldn't learn Tvul Yom. You know why? She came Mechusei Maisa. A Tvul Yom doesn't do anything. He went to the mikveh. Now he just has to wait for sunset. In fact, we had a whole discussion before. If Mechusei's man is considered, Mechusei Maisa, not does nothing. He just waits. But a Mechusei Kippurim still has to do something to cleanse themselves. Somebody Tameh has to do something to cleanse themselves. So therefore, we would say a Mechusei Kippurim ruins it because he still has to do something. Until he does that thing, he's Tameh. By saying that Tvul Yom doesn't do anything, so maybe it's as if it already happened because there's nothing for him to do. So maybe it doesn't ruin the carbon. So okay, says okay, I grant you can't learn if it said only one, you wouldn't know the others. Or let it say two things, Tameh and one of these, and you'll know the third one. So Gemara said, which one should I omit and you think is extra? Let it not say by Mechusei Purim, let it tell you not say anything about Mechusei Kippurim, he ruins the carbon. And let's learn between, once you know that Tvul Yom and the Tameh ruins the carbon, Mechusei Kippurim is the same. Nay, I would say Malahana, she came psulim with Truma. A Tameh is not eat Truma, and even a Tvul Yom who went to the mikveh already cannot eat Truma, so it's very strict. On Mechusei Kippurim, no, it was after the sunset, and all it is still he's missing his carbon, he's allowed to eat Truma. So he's much weaker. Maybe he doesn't ruin the avodah in the base of Mikdash. Elo, okay. Don't omit the title of Torah should omit Tvul Yom and just say Mechusei Kippurim and Tameh. I would know. But Teisim Hanach. My part, what are you going to ask me? You're going to say to me, you'll say to me, right? You still have to do Maisa, right? Malahana gave a Chesar Maisa. You're going to tell me that what? That that Tameh has to go to mikveh, Mechusei Kippurim has to bring a carbon, so it's strict, and therefore they ruin the avodah. Whatever avodah they do, they ruin. Mashenke and a Tvul Yom doesn't have to do anything as if it's there. He says, so what? Tell me, who has a weaker? Who's on the higher kind of tumah? Which is the lowest level tumah? Mechusei Kippurim. He already went to the mikveh. He already had sunset. He already had eat truma. So therefore, he's in Mechusei Kippurim, the lowest level. So Klishli Tumasan. The tumah of a Mechusei Kippurim is the weakest because he already went to the mikveh and he already had sunset. And yet you tell me that if he works in the base of Migdash, he ruins the carbon, then surely it's Tvul Yom, which is stricter. So now the Gemara makes a big chiddush. Kasava, the Rabbi holds, Mechusei Kippurim the Zav, Kezav Dami. Those two cases, a normal Mechusei Kippurim, not Zav. A Mechusik Kippurim that a normal person goes to the mikveh and it's over. It's only limited to Zav and Metzora where we say that the Mechusik Kippurim. But I want you to know that in these two cases where you need a carbon, Poles man, you didn't bring a carbon. It's like you didn't go to mikveh. It's not like, but everyone else at Tvul Yom going to mikveh, you're already a much lower level, and then Hashem is almost. But this person still being carbon, we're going to treat it as if you did not go to the mikveh. And as Ashi says, you still metame things. All the dinim of a tumah is there as if you didn't go to mikveh. So the Tvul Yom, even though it didn't get sunset yet, but he went to the mikveh, he's already a lot lower, right? He only passes truma and kachim, he can't pass chulin. But Masha'in came a mechusik Kippurim like he never went to the mikveh. So in other words, his tumah is not weaker at all. Faces argues a different shot, but that's how Rashi learns. Says the Gemara, "Umechusik Kippurim the Zav Kizav Dami actually is a machlekes tanaim." This with the rabbis Chiddush seems to be machlekes tanaim. Where do you find the machlekes tanaim? The Tadi we learned, but I say, what happens when it comes to paraduma? Sarfa, who burnt the paraduma on Oinen? A kohen, an oinen, somebody who lost one of his parents, and he's not allowed to do avodah, but he did. He did. And I'm talking now about paraduma. We learned before about the oinen runes and things. Maybe we're talking about now paraduma. And a mechusik kippurim, and a mechusik when it comes to paraduma, shaded kosher. So this Tana holds that a mechusik kippurim did the is all right. You know why? Because it's not considered. Remember we had before that paraduma is not really a carbon; it's bezek habayis. It's maintenance of you shecht it outside the base of English. It's maintenance of the base of English to maintain the kohen, maintain the keli, and make sure everything is tied. So this is part of bedek habayis, and therefore there's no isa for an oinen there, and the mechusik put him as well, because where is the isa of an oinen? Only by korbanos that brought in the base of English. However, Yosef Hababli says oinen, since he came from Babel and was a rare thing, he said that oinen is shada. He says, and I'll grant you is kosher. The East is only by kabbanis. Why should mechusik kippurim psul possible? If you tell me ein is mutter, why tell me ein is mutter? Because it's not a carbon. No, so why mechusik kippurim mutter? You know why? My lab hakamifki. That's exactly the machlekes. One holds that it's like a zav, therefore he's totally tamei. In other words, as if it never happened, as if the mikveh never happened. He's tamei. How can he bring a paraduma? And the Torah clearly says who should be makriv the paraduma? He's tired. And he's not. No, his tumah now is klisha, is so weak. He already went through mikveh and everything else, and he already went ahead of shemesh, and he's very weak, and therefore it's not really tamei. He's not really tamei anymore. Just as being a carbon. His tumah is gone, just like any tvul. Came the sun set, his tumah disappeared. Navas, he's not allowed to eat kachim until he brings a carbon. So therefore, he can do paraduma. So Rabba's vart is a machlekes. So you want to know? Lo no, maybe kuli alma kazav dami. Everyone holds that no, the Rabba's vort is according to everybody. That Kolzman, you didn't bring a carbon. It's not just you have a chiv of a carbon. It's like you didn't take away your tumah yet. Because for you to take away your tumah, you need to bring the kabbanis. So what's the machlekes? Interesting. B'hakam if it's a machlekes. The chiv, the pasuk says, "V'hiza hatoir al hatamei." It says in the pasuk that the toir should sprinkle on the tamei. Now the pasuk right before said ish toir. A toidig person. So why do you have to say hatoid? To tell you, even if he's slightly toid, in fact, you remember to Dafukid, yeah, Dafukid is looking with Dafukid at Tvul, and this because this is a drasha. The drasha is hatoid means a little bit, a modikim of tara, not a full tara, but a modikim. Who's that? A Tvul. He went to the mikveh, but he's missing yet the harushemish. So he is not fully toid yet. So this is the hatoid means slightly toid. Miklal shu tameh. He's partial that he was tamei and he's partially still tamei. Limid al tvul yom shekosher bepara. Tells you that tvul yom is kosher paradumas. What's machlekes? So machlekes is what kind of tvul yom? There's two kinds of tvul yoms. There's a tvul yom for all the tumas that all you need is harushemish. There's a tvul yom for also that includes zav and mitzayra. A tvul yom by zav and mitzayra needs still kabbanis. So when we say that a tvul yom is kosher paraduma, are we talking about even a tvul yom that still needs kabbanis? Doesn't matter that kabbanis has nothing to do with tumah. That's the din in kachim that he has to bring a carbon, and called by he didn't, he cannot eat. Or is tvul yom limited only to those places where there is nothing else after the going to the mikveh and then heru shemish, and therefore what about it comes to zav and mitzayra? That's not included. They're still mamish tamei. And that's the machlekes. The machlekes is the tumah written there in that parsha is talking about tumah of mace and tumah of sheretz. The pasuk there, that parsha there is by paradum, talking about mace, is not talking about zov and mitzvah. So when we learn Tvul Yom, are we talking about only the tumah in this parsha chukas, tumah's mace, or we're talking about all tumas, including zov and mitzvah? That's the machlekes. Ma'asava tumah the chalatayda kula. We're talking about any tumah, Tvul Yom, even those zov and mitzvah, and therefore the tumah is gone. The tumah is gone, and that's why you could do a paraduma. No. The Tvul Yom that we're talking about over here, that he can be involved in the paraduma, is only the tumah of tumas mace. And the kosh came tumas sheretz, but not tumah of a zav and a mitzvah. That because you still bring kabbanis, you're still tamei. So Tvul Yom of a tamei sheretz, which is even easier, make a kavachayim for mace, 7 days. The Tvul Yom is all right, then surely of a sheretz. Ava mechusik kipurim to zav. But you want to learn that by paraduma, you can use someone who is tamei, not when it comes to mechusik kipurim, because there's another activity. There's chomer, that's much stricter. She can't tumah, and why taka is stricter? Why taka should the tumah still linger on? Okay, maybe just what's the svara? The svara is that this by a mace, something outside of you, you touch, you become tamei. Zav and mitzvah are both from within yourself. And so tumah yoytzelav megufay loy. That's much stricter, and therefore you're still tamei until you bring the kabbanas. Says okay, the next thing the Mishnah says is if a kohen gadol is not wearing all his 8 vestments, or a kohen head is not wearing all his 4, then not only is he also do avodah, but because we had before, that's the klei shodos. So kohen means his clothes, but he ruins, he's machal whatever he's doing. Right? You want to know, how do you know that? Others say the chagarta you should wrap around your avnate, the gartel. Then it says you should place on your mikbois the hats, and then it says kuhuna. Only then are you treated like a kohen l'chuk shaylim. In other words, if he doesn't wear all the clothes, he's a Yisrael. And what do we know already by Azar? We already learned before that Azar is mechalel everything that he does. The clothes make a man. The famous debate. This is clear. Kuhunosam aleim. Ain't big day aleim. They're not wearing the clothes. Ain't kuhunosam aleim. They're not kohen. Right? The Gemara. You tell me you learn from this pasuk. Mahasam nafke is a brayse that tells you we learn it from somewhere totally different. The time you learn the brayse. How do you know somebody who's inebriated? That if he not only is not allowed to work in the base of Mikdash, but if he did, he desecrates all the things that he made. It says the pasuk yayin v'sheicher al teist. Right after the story of Novi, it says you shouldn't drink any wine, old wine, and then the pasuk says afterwards, the next pasuk, this will distinguish whether what you're doing is kodesh or whether what you're doing is chayil. Because if you're inebriated, then you ruin it's not kodesh. And then the Braisa continues. What does that have to do with what we're talking about? Then the Braisa continues. A kohen is missing clothes. Or didn't wash his hands from the kir that he's supposed to on his feet. How do you know that he also ruins it? We have a Gedei Shava, chukah. It says by Yaim V'Shech, it says chukas oilam doresechem. And it says there, by the wearing the clothes, it says also the Haislam Kuna l'chukas oilam. So it seems from the Braisa here that we're learning not from the pasuk of Chagat, the way you learn it. We learn it Shabbat from Shtui Yayin. So how can you tell me we learn from the? If you're right, then why need to Shabbat Shtui Yayin to teach you that a kohen who's not that he ruins the thing? You're saying here that only them Haishlem Kahuna Chukas Olam. That's what you said before. And if he's not wearing his clothes, he's a zor. He's a Yisrael. He's not a kohen. But from the Braisa, it seems that's not how we learn it. We learn from that pasuk, but Shabbat from Shtui Yayin. But the Gemara, if we learn from Shtui Yayin, I would have thought Hani Mili Avoida, only those Avoidas, the Zor Chayv Misa. It says in the pasuk there, if you drank wine, the so only those things that if you're a kohen who's not wearing clothes is like Yisrael, so those things that Yisrael is Chayv Misan, fine, you be Chayv Misa. What things that Yisrael Chayv Misan we learned has to be Avoida Tama. Right, Avada Tem, it says, we learn about time, we learn about human, and that is that it has to be Zika, because you don't do anything after Zika. Hak once you put it on the base of the base, nothing else to do. Nisach Hamayim, once you pour it down, that's it. No, any activity, but for example, Kabbalah. If a Yisrael does Kabbalah, you're not Chai Misa, because after you receive the blood, you got to then take it and halacha, you're not Chai Misa. Shchita, you're allowed to do a Yisrael. So therefore, I would have thought that when do we say that a Kohen ruins the Avodah, only those things was Misa for Yisrael, because we're going to treat the Kohen like a Yisrael. Only those things that he's like a Yisrael. But what about those activities, for example, Kabbalah, receiving the blood? If a Yisrael did it, it's an Aveda, but you're not Chai Misa, because it's not the end of that Avodah. You still have to take it, transport it to the Mizbeach. And same thing by halacha. I would have thought then, by a Kohen, he doesn't ruin it then. Kamashlan, therefore, we need the other possible that any Avodah the Kohen does. If he's not wearing all of his clothes, he ruins it. Says he went, okay. So Ashkan, we know from here, so we know a Kohen is not wearing all of his clothes. If he does the other Avodas, even though they're not complete, he's Chai Misa. But now let's go back to Shtu Yain. So Shtu Yain, all we know Shtu Yain is those avodas that are Yisrael's Chai Misa. But what about let's say if you're drunk, if a kohen is drunk and he does receiving the blood, or if a kohen is drunk and he does the loch, Haino Takis Chai Misa. Asya, we learn now. Now we go reverse. Now we go the other way. We're going to learn. So the way the Gemara stands right now is really weird. We learn out of kohen missing clothes. We learn that from the Chagarta, and the Gezerah Shava is for the reverse. We're not learning a kohen missing clothes from Shtu Yain. We're learning Shtu Yain from a kohen who has less clothes than he's supposed to have. Just like over there, I don't care which avodah, which stage it is, you're Chai Misa. So in Shtu Yain, whichever stage it is, you're Chai Misa. Talking about what do you mean? But Tana, we learned Lahavdil Bain. We learned before that Yain V'Sheich learned from itself. It says in the pasuk Lahavdil Bain Kodesh L'Chor. That Shtu Yain. That you're not learning Shtu Yain from a kohen's clothes. Says the Gemara. Interesting. The first Tana didn't remember the Gezerah Shava. So the Tana didn't remember the Gezerah Shava. That's what Rashi says. And therefore, he tells you can learn that, from the Pshat of the Pasuk, Lahavdil Bain, that's how you learn Shtu Yain. The lake is there before you knew the Gezerah Shava. What are you talking about? The Braisa clearly brings the Gezerah Shava. He says chukka, and he's saying that's you're learning clothes from Shtu Yain. Not the Hachakama. So this is Pshat in the Braisa, and we're not like changing the whole Braisa around. Minayin, how do you know? Not we're trying to learn mechusa begadim from Shtu Yain. How do you know that there should be no difference in the outcome between the consequences of someone who's mechusa begadim, which we said is all Avedis, and someone who's Shtu Yain, which should also be all Avedis, and they also the chadaim should be all Avedis. We're using the shava, but not to learn clothes from Shtu Yain, but Shtu Yain from clothes. They will have the lamali. Now that we have a shava, so why taka? What do you do the pasuk lahavdu ben hakodesh? What do you need the pasuk for? We have a shava to tell you that applies to everything that you ruin the avodah. So why is the whole pasuk lahavdu ben hakodesh ben hakodesh? If somebody's Shtu Yain, somebody's drunk, you should know that that not being drunk makes a difference whether it's kodesh or chayil. If you're drunk, it's not going to be kodesh. What do you need the pasuk for? That's more interesting. Look at the Rav. The Rav was a Chassidish Yid, and from the beginning of Yom Tov to the end of Yom Tov, he was not in the right mind to be able to paskin. And he learned that the Rav would not give a shir, would not give any halachas. He always used to have this like a loudspeaker, somebody with a loud voice, and who could pass on whatever the shir would say, like that. Same thing. I made it from Ibazon exactly. From the moment Rashi says, from the moment Yom Tov starts. Or he said, Rashi from the moment he ate his first meal, ad l'mocher. He was under the influence. It's clear. He was under the influence. Mishum shikrus. Not stam under the influence. He was happy. So how does he know that? That by drinking wine, it's not just a din in the base of English. We already we'll have it in Christmas. We learn out that you shouldn't paskin. Shouldn't paskin. Let's go a few more lines, finish the sugi. You learn it from here. You learn it. Don't we learn from somewhere else about a kohen mir and go the clothes as a pasuk? It says a pasuk. The nosnu bnei Aaron kohen. The bnei Aaron kohen should place a fire on the mizbech. They should place the fire on the mizbech, and it says bnei Aaron hakohen. Everyone knows bnei Aaron is. Why does it say hakohen? To tell you, biki hune, while he looks like a kohen, he's dressed like a kohen. So we see from here that every avodah they have to wear all the clothes. Says the Gemara. Limit al Kohen, and we learn now that says that we learn Kohen Gadol. And we learn from here Kohen Gadol. Shalavat be the Kohen Hedget wore the clothes of a Kohen Hedget. In other words, he's not wearing all 8 clothes. The Avad Avodas Psul is possible. So we know already that Kohen, whatever Kohen you are, you have to wear all your clothes. From that pasuk, says no. If we knew about the fire, if we only had the pasuk before about kahunas olam, I would say those are avoiders that are critical. Avoided the ma'akva kapara. If you don't do them, it's ma'akim kabbalah, all these activities. Otherwise, no carbon. So therefore, it's really close. But it comes to fire. There's a fire coming from heaven. No, mitzvah also to bring from a head yet. But there's a fire. We don't really need my input. So I would have thought if I don't wear the clothes, big deal. If the coin doesn't wear the clothes, like, and that's why you need it. So all the Mephoshim ask, why do you have to tell me Rashi to say mice with a fire from heaven? Just say that the whole. Remember we learned before that Toidus itself burning the rest of the carbon doesn't matter. If you don't bring up the rest of the carbon as bech, you were still yaitza. So we would have thought that doesn't matter if a kohen's not wearing his clothes. But by a carbon mincha, you take the kimitza. When you take that piece off, you have to put it makim mizbeach, and that's ma'akiv. So therefore, and it sounds to me that anything to do with fire is extra because we have a fire from heaven. Saying from another pasuk, it says, again, hakoinim should set up as hadasachim all the pieces. Hakoinim bikun have to be dressed like a kohen. Mekan b'nil or not, kohen hedged shall be a kohen gadol. If a kohen hedged wears the clothes of a kohen gadol, in other words, he wears extra clothes. V'avad Abba does it already apostle. Says the Gemara concludes. If from there, I would have thought, I would have thought if a kohen is missing. Without this last pasuk, I would have thought, if you're wearing less clothes than you should, or the yitur, if you're wearing extra clothes, you're wearing what you have plus extra. Maybe low is not a problem. It's missing, and therefore it's not good. Even though we say yes, it cannot if you have that true. But we have in Hilchos Shabbos. By candles, but Amos says clearly, let's say you have to have 2 candles. Nothing wrong with having more candles because you still have your 2 for Zocher v'Shamar, and having more doesn't take away from what you do. So I guess you have to know when you apply this rule and when you apply that rule. When you say yes, it cannot be, and when you say like something like that. Actually, coming
of Shabbos licht is also Tosefes Oiv. You want it to be light in the house, but
the number of lights, how much you light? You light all over the house.
If there's an Indian to have extra light, so then the more is better.
How do you know that?
Mitzvah.
So Rambi brings that there's some that it's 7 for the 7 days a week. This that we do, you light candles according to the number of people in the family, is not written anywhere.
It's because the first week is stated that the man, when his wife has the baby, the man should light with.
No.
So if a woman misses a week, she has to do an extra one to be machaper. Well,
it's not a knas. It's only a knas if you forgot. There we tell her we don't let her, and then you cancel her.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't let me not let her. I lit the licht, and she went lit.
You know the word is.
Today she can't bench lift. Not gonna happen.
You know the word is why Taka the first week that she gives birth, the Bar Hater says that she doesn't light. The reason why she lights, according to one reason, is he kofs aneda shalolim because of Adam Marishan, and they brought Misa to the world, so you mechaper. But now that she brought light to the world this week by bringing a child in the world, she doesn't have to bring another light. Therefore, the man does.
Who's that?
No. This expression just gave you. I have no idea what it says. Just a little shot in by it. I hate the one who says that the Shabbos that she lights.
That's the whole reason why she lights. Corresponding to the number of people in the family, she's moist because she misses each time she has a baby.
But you can't punish her for.
No, isn't she supposed to be moist? I think that's what it's done.
You're moist only if it's a knas, and only if you forgot. Yeah. I actually went to somebody's house that had like 20 plus candles.
Because she forgot this time.
She says every time she travels, she's suddenly forgets things. Best traveling. There's no room on the table soon.
By a fireplace,
Not only that, there's a whole shaila. What happens? You light 5 candles, and you forgot to light the 5th candle. What's the gather of that? Is that considered? No, yeah. So no, now that you light 5, is your mitzvah 5, or the mitzvah still 1 or 2, and then this is all how you suffer, and you don't cancel on how you suffer. And all these questions come up. Okay.
That was talking that I've like even young girls like. A young girl goes to camp. It's shy. Maybe you could,
Or nobody counts as a young girl.
Just saying,
Okay. Anyway, this Gemara today was Erev Yom Kippur's Gemara. Tomorrow we'll learn Yom Kippur's Gemara.
What's in Tibbana?
Who has it? Yeah. Who has it? Okay, have a good day.